This episode is sponsored by The Path, the coach-guided membership designed to help you make alcohol small and irrelevant in your life by removing your true desire to grab that next drink. Our science-based, compassion-led program allows you not only to shift your behavior and your relationship around alcohol, but more importantly, uncover and reprogram your subconscious conditioning and neural connections that have been keeping you stuck for years. With daily live breakthrough coaching, an intimate and supportive community, regular peer-to-peer connection calls, and a complete vault of resources, this is where your path to total freedom and effortless enjoyment of your new way of life begins. Join us at nakedmindpath.com. Hi, this is Annie Grace, and welcome to this Naked Mind podcast. And I'm here with Jayne. Hi, welcome, Jayne. How are you?
Good. How are you? It's so nice to meet you.
So great to meet you too. So why don't you take us back to the beginning in your relationship with alcohol? Like, where did it all start for you?
So for me, when I kind of look back on it, I think my relationship with alcohol really didn't stand a fighting chance right from the beginning, because I was using it as a coping mechanism right from day one. You know, I had a typical first experiences with it as a young kid, you know, trying a Kahlua and milk, a brown cow, or a fuzzy navel at a Christmas party or something. But I think as I got older, the first few times when I was a teenager, I would overconsume. And, you know, looking back, the first time to the point where, you know, my parents had gone away, my two older brothers were having a party, and I had alcohol poisoning, and they were debating whether or not they were going to call the ambulance or not, because they didn't want to get in trouble. But looking back on it, you know, I had blacked out, and those first encounters were really bad. They weren't, you know, they were few and far between, but they were not great. My childhood was it was chaotic, and both my parents worked 12-hour shifts. My mom was a nurse, and my dad in my teenage years was an industrial nurse. And you know, they lived to work, and family life was really not a priority. And I look back and think, you know, I don't blame them now, because I know that they only had the tools that they were given to raise us. But my goal as a teenager was sort of, you know, focus on my friends and, you know, avoid family life, and, you know, let's get out of here as fast as we can, sort of thing. So fast forward to college, I had a great time. Like, I left home when I was 18. I went to college, and I had a great time, met some wonderful friends. I loved the independence of it. And my drinking slowed down a little bit. Like, it didn't slow down. It just wasn't as dramatic as it was when I was a teenager. It was more going to pubs and social gatherings. We'd have friends over for dinner, and it was a different pace, I guess you could say. And I enjoyed traveling. I went out to the East Coast for a co-op, to New Brunswick, and then out to the West Coast I worked in Whistler. But drinking was always sort of at the forefront of everything I did. You know, it was every group of friends I had, that was the focal point. And some instances were worse than others, but, you know, we worked in hospitality, and we worked hard, and we played hard. And then through the years, I came home for a little bit, really wasn't happy. Nothing had really changed. So I decided, okay, I need to focus on my career. So I got a job with an Australian wine company, which is probably the largest one, as their sales coordinator. And I had worked my way up through that company, taking sales positions, working with sales and marketing, and getting certifications. And then after my time there, I met my husband, funny enough, at a trade show. He was working in the beer industry. I was working in wine. And we decided to move out to where he had grown up. So you know, my focus was my career. I continued down this path of wine. I think the wine industry sort of justified my consumption because it was glamorous and sophisticated, or what I thought it was, romanticized. And I was able to travel with the companies and go to wineries and travel to California. And as a young adult, that was wonderful. Like, that was the greatest thing that could ever happen to me, right? And it took its toll on me. And I saw a lot. It looks all wonderful and great on the outside, but the sales meetings and the pressure behind the industry was increasing. I later moved over to the biggest big alcohol company, and I started off on their wine team as a wine and reserve specialist, and continue, grinding to get every possible certification that I could. And it was taxing because I was driving, an hour and a half to to do these certifications and wine dinners, and we would do distillery tours. And then I found out I was like newly married. I found out I was pregnant, and immediately I was able to stop and I focused on my pregnancy. And I was like, well, that's interesting, like I can do this. But the pressures, after I had my daughter, the first month she was born, my husband had lost his job. So again, newly married, stresses of life, financial stresses, me going back to work with my daughter being quite young. I the anxiety was increasing, the pressure of life was building, and I was using wine as a coping mechanism. So it was, for a long time, it had been my passion, sort of my obsession almost, and then it was taking a negative influence in my life, and I was finding it to be like it was the cause of my anxiety, but also the solution at the same time, this vicious cycle. I would wake up and I would say, like, I can't, you can't drink that much. Or I would be at an event or a work function, and I just didn't have that. I wasn't having that off switch. And I I would regret the next day, and then I would go right back to do it again the very next day. And it was just this vicious cycle. I started running as a means to, maybe compensate some of those feel good chemicals. And I started with a 5K, a 10K, and over the years worked my way up to a half marathon. But I remember coming home that night and drinking a bottle of wine, and I can just imagine what it was doing to my body. So that's really, I sort of transitioned into spirits after wine, and that became quite a problem. I think the higher alcohol content, luckily, I was on a team that was very supportive, and and they're still friends to this day. But it took its toll. The spirits industry really, there was a transition with the company. The financial pressures were getting larger. I was consuming more, and it was just really catching. I felt like I couldn't drive. The majority of my job was driving, and going to different accounts. And I was having full on panic attacks. I talked to my doctor, and his solution was AA and an antidepressant. And so I was like, what is, like, this doesn't feel like a solution to me. Like, I can't not have alcohol in my life. Like, I am captain of the alcohol drinking team. Like, this is not possible. I never thought in a million years that it would come down to that. So I started looking into options, and researching different things. And I had joined Hello Sunday Morning as an Australian kind of platform online, and just to like shift my perception around things, just to maybe get a little bit of a break. But it was maybe short lived, and then I would go back. And for me, I would do the dry January, I would get healthy, I would lose some weight, and then I would slowly go back. And so eventually I did take the antidepressant while drinking to a high, like to my highest amount. And I was blacking out. I was, still going through that cycle of, I was in accounts 8 times a day, selling the product and representing these products, being surrounded by it at work and at home, in social environments. Like I couldn't get away from it. It was everywhere. And that's when I realized, like, so my two pregnancies and my maternity leaves were the only time I had a break. And I love that time. Like it was the healthiest time of my life. And at that point, I knew that that's where I started my journey of not sobriety, but like looking into what is going on here. Something needs to change. I can't live like this anymore.
Hmm. Wow. What a fascinating story, and especially seeing it from kind of the inside of it all. Was there ever anything where you're like, huh, feels weird that this is causing problems in my life and this industry is so thriving? Or did that, I mean, I know that it could be.
Yeah, like, and I would see people and I would just think, oh, wow, like that, there was a lot of terrible things that happened, with other people. And I would think, oh, they should probably look into that, like on this side, but not realizing that maybe I needed to look in the mirror, right? But I tried to, my drinking was very private. Like I never wanted to be, I really tried to hold it together in those environments, at work and socially, not every single time, but I would either have drinks before I went out or when I got home. And I would have to like plan that all out, make sure that I wasn't, too embarrassed, because I'm very like sensitive and I didn't want to be embarrassed. I was, my job was everything to my family because my husband at that point didn't have a job. So I was very career focused. But there were times, there were times that I look and I think, there was a lot of breakups with marriages. There was devastation with, people having accidents at work, falling downstairs, really terrible things. And work promoted, like they would say things like, drink responsibly, but you're having wine tastings at 12 in the afternoon and, oh, but make sure you're there for dinner or cocktails and then dinner and then after dinner drinks. And then we're going to go to this game and you're out until 2 in the morning, but you have to wake up and be at the meeting at 8 o'clock. So the drink responsibly thing is just too much in the industry when it's everywhere. And there really wasn't a choice. If you weren't drinking, you were either pregnant or you had a problem, really.
Right. Wow. Wow. So you're coming to this realization, and then what happened?
And then, so I started researching different, Googling what should I do? How many drinks is the norm? What's healthy, what's not? I would look up YouTube videos, and I was textbook. Like, I had childhood trauma. I had, growing up, I had low self-esteem. I used alcohol as a coping mechanism. My life, my livelihood revolved around wine. I really felt like I was stuck. And, I was, financially, this was what was, paying the bills. But I was learning and uncovering the real truth behind alcohol. And when I found your book, I was just like blown away. Like I think I read it in a weekend. Like it was just like unbelievable. And then I was thinking, why didn't I find this sooner? Like I needed this. And then I right away did the 30-day alcohol experiment. I love that it was an experiment because I didn't want it to be a sentence or, I wanted to explore and I wanted to see how I would feel. And I continued to do about 6 or 7 alcohol experiments over the next couple of years. I then was preparing for a pretty intense surgery. I had jaw joint replacement surgery. So I had to I wanted to get really healthy. And so I did the intensive program and Scott led that. And that was amazing. And I learned about spontaneous sobriety. I was sober for about 4 months. I had a slip around a data point at Christmas time, but I got right back at it, and I was good for my surgery. It was a 9.5 hour long surgery, and there was complications where they damaged my nerve. So I had facial paralysis on the one side of my face, which during recovery was horrible. Like, I didn't know if it was going to come back. They gave me oxycodone, and I was like, this could be a real problem. like, and within a couple months, I tried to go back and have a glass of wine at dinner. And within a month, I was back to where I started. And I knew at that point that the alcohol had changed my brain. And I was, as much as I wanted to find that moderation platform, or, because that's where my goal was. I just wanted to be a normal drinker. I just wanted to be, I wanted to have a place in my life for alcohol still. Like, after reading all of the material and memoirs and information on it, I still wasn't there yet until COVID hit and things got worse, because then I was isolated, and I changed from bottles of wine to boxes of wine so that nobody would notice. When the wine was gone, I would switch to bourbon, and it got really bad. And it wasn't until I found acceptance that this is my thing, and I'm the only one who can change it. Like, I was so tired of going through this, and I'm the one doing it. Like, I just couldn't believe that, I'd wake up and I'd be a completely different person, but then this, alcohol would change me completely. And I was just so tired of suffering. The thing that held me back was I couldn't even imagine telling my friends and family. Like, I just couldn't. But it was when I accepted it and made the firm decision that this is my thing, and I have two choices, and I can live a healthy life, be a good mother, and live to my fullest potential, was really, really when the work started. But it took, I think it probably took about 5 or 6 years to get to that point of just digging my heels in and fighting tooth and nail that I was not going to, let this be my thing. And I guess I had to go through all of that to get to that point. And I was in a meeting, excuse me, my voice. I was in a meeting, and I raised my hand and I said, I'm 4 days sober. And the person introduced me to someone, Peggy Cooney, and she had wrote This Side of Alcohol, this book. And then Peggy introduced me to Susan, and Susan Larkin is this Naked Mind coach. And it wasn't until I connected all together and had support with them that I was able to do the work, weekly work with Susan. I had made the decision, and I said in our discovery call, I said, Susan, I want this to be exciting. I want it to, my mindset is different now. Like, my mindset before was, I don't want this to be my thing. I'm going to resist it at every possible chance. Until I shifted my mindset is when the real magic started to happen, and I saw change and growth, and I could see myself being alcohol free, and the rewards started coming in and the benefits.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, Susan is really incredible and such a good coach. So that's just so great. Yeah. So how was it shifting everything when you went at it with this new attitude?
So the first 2 weeks were definitely the hardest. I think emotionally, just everything. Like, it was just a big process. I was still not prepared to tell my friends and family at that point. I did tell my children, and before, that was one of the other things. I never had told them. And I think having those cheerleaders in the background were really like, I held myself accountable to them because they were always my why. My kids, my husband, myself, my health. But when we started doing that weekly work where we could do the ACT technique and break down some of the things that were holding me back before, I think was really crucial. And digging into some, deep rooted beliefs, because I had, the conditioning that I had around drinking and the consistency was huge. So it's really going back to all that. My emotions were super unregulated. Like I was, any inconvenience, like I was in a rear ender, like someone rear ended me, and it was my daughter's birthday and I was hysterical. And I had a meeting with Susan that night and she was able to work me through it. And, things like that, that I would immediately turn to alcohol with as soon as I got home and just like numb it, push it away. I don't want to deal with this. Also, anger was another thing that Susan helped work through. I would I would drink at certain people in my life, and she would be like, well, there's other ways to cope, and like, let's look at some healthy, so I took the dog for far too many walks in the first like couple months, and there were ups and downs, and but I think at that point I had already done like most of the terrible, I couldn't string together more than a couple days alcohol free. So at this point it was like more of a journey. It was like I found connection finally. I was so determined and excited at this point that all of the wreckage was kind of in the background. I was looking forward, and the last year, like the first year of sobriety, was fantastic. I'm a year and 2.5 months, so I'm fairly new. But Susan says that the second year is even better, so I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, that's so great. And what a cool story. So how have you found it to be sort of socially and with friendships and whatnot?
So I had to have some foundation and strength around my sobriety before I could tell anyone. When I hit a year, just around a year, I told my mom around 8 months, and she was wonderful. Like she was very supportive. We have had our challenges in the past, but she was amazing, and I talk to her all the time about it now. And then my friends were so supportive, and they're like, "Why didn't you tell me? You should have told me." Like some were mad. They're like, "I would have been able to help you." Others didn't understand, and don't really say too much. Some don't. And others think I'm taking a break. Like they don't really get the true depth of like what I went through to get here, what I've done to get to this point, how important it is to me, how sacred and protected I need my sobriety to be. And I'm fine. Like I am in such a better place than I was, a year and a half ago, because I can bring my own drinks, my cranberry soda, my groovy, whatever it is. And I am grateful that this is my life. Like I don't have to deal with all of that thinking and planning and regrets, and I that's the part I don't think anyone really can understand unless they've gone through it. And I have my Saturdays and Sundays, and I can be the mom and person that I want to be. Like that, those are things that I don't think some can understand. But that's what really held me back at the beginning, was telling friends and family, because they just knew me as the wine girl. Like, if we went to a restaurant, I got the wine list. This was my identity. Like wine had become my identity, and I really had to go back and peel back all those layers and sort of create like who am I? Like who is the authentic me, and who do I really want to be in this life, right?
Yeah, that's really amazing. That's really great. Well, this has just been awesome. Let me ask you the question I kind of finished these up with, which is, at this stage, if you were going to look back and talk to Jayne about, when she felt really stuck and like maybe it wasn't, things didn't feel possible or it felt really, really hard, what would you tell her about how things are now?
I just, I 100% never ever thought this was going to be possible for me. Like, I know I've heard people say that, but I truly did not. I would have thought, this isn't you're not going to be able to do this. So I would just say, keep going and keep like connecting with people that have gone through this, just to know what's on the other side of it, to know that there is a life and it's wonderful and beautiful and I get to live it is just beyond me. I guess to reach out, to get support, connection is huge. To see people, because that's the one thing is I thought I was the only person. Like I really truly thought that the alcohol use disorder is such a spectrum, and I never thought that there could be like a middle ground or anything in between. But to see so many people in like the 30-day alcohol experiment and in different groups that are just like me, and they are going through the exact same thing. Like so many of these stories, they're all different. Everybody's story, history, path is different, but at the core center of it, they're all sort of similar, and so I would just say like it's so worth it, and I would not give up anything. I just keep like, thank God I was persistent and I persevered and I kept trying to, I grinded, and I think that's what makes it so wonderful.
Oh, I love that. And it's so true. Like our stories are not dissimilar. I mean, they're so the same. And I think it's one of the most freeing things that people experience as they kind of grow, even in joining like communities or getting in Facebook groups or just, listening to a podcast and hearing that there's so many other people in the same boat. It's so freeing and normalizing to realize that we're just really not alone in this.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So great. Well, thank you so much, Jayne. Thanks so much for coming on and telling your story. It was just a total pleasure and really great to get to know you.
Yes, thank you so much. I've had such a nice time, and it's so nice to meet you too.
Yeah, so great.
We are so excited to announce our newly recalibrated signature program, the Path Freedom Accelerated. This 90-day program is designed to make freedom from alcohol quicker, more accessible, and more affordable than ever before. Imagine if just 90 days from now you discover a new freedom without feeling like you're hanging on to willpower by your fingernails, without feeling deprived or like you're missing out, and without the shame, guilt, and blame. The Path Freedom Accelerated provides a guided, almost hypnotic sequence of content that speaks not only to your conscious mind, but also to your subconscious, actually changing your desire for a drink. Plus, you will receive daily accountability and support from our coaches and our community. If you feel like you have lost control of your drinking, there is a solution, one that's easier than you might think and doesn't involve rules, missing out, or deprivation. We would love for you to join us. Go to nakedmindpath.com to learn more. And as always, rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast as it truly helps the message reach somebody who might need to hear it today.